First of all, Rahul was just touch and go. He was waiting for his COVID test report. Will he go into isolation? Will he not? So he's just tested negative. All is well,
Yes.
right? All is well. And we must
That's
pray
great.
for Binodji. He
Yeah.
has very sweetly messaged me today with loads of his blessings. And what a start I had. That was the first message that I read, right? And he said Rahul is coming in. So that was good news. Binodji has unfortunately tested positive, but he's asymptomatic and he's doing well. He self isolated himself. So I'm sure his blessings are there with us. Now, I don't have to add much because you're all stars in your own rights, right? Ratan Keswani, nobody gets better for a moderator than you. Loads of experience. And the genial giant, Ajay Bakaya, man of few words. But somebody I really admire. I would, behind his back, call him a stud, right? Shudip, very quiet mover, very silent operator, very genial, right? A New Yorker, now in India. Samir MC, he's my brother, my friend. What do I say about him, right? Great hotelier. And of course, Nikhil, badmash hai, but acha bachcha. Very good hotelier. And Rahul, this is our first show together. I really look forward to our show together. He leads the hospitality initiative of the CG Group. Vilas will come in again. My close friend's brother-in-law and close friend, my schoolmates. Another very smart hotelier. Over to you, Ratan. I won't want to take away your time.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the
Morning.
introduction, Bhuvnesh. I'd just like to express absolute kudos to Bhuvnesh and his team for what we saw and heard yesterday. I think it was a logistical masterpiece, perfectly worked out on time. I do hope you got your lunch after that, because I believe you missed your lunch, as did your team members. But I think it was quite fabulous to put the whole thing together and for it to go so seamlessly and on time. Congratulations to everybody. And to everybody who's on the participants and watching us chat amongst each other. Our panelists are well known, so I really won't spend too much of captive time introducing them. The only thing I'd give a background to is some of us heard some of the speeches yesterday, and I think we've all seen the headlines, and those leave us even more confused in what the world brings back to us. So the topic is how steep is the climb? And I'd like to just kind of quote the economic advisor who was on TV last night, where after saying, oh, but we only went down 23%, we expected 19% deficit. But now we are on the V. What he forgot to mention is, are we on the tip of the V, or are we still to reach the tip of the V before we start going up again? So I guess not too many people really know what is going to happen in the future around us. In all the calls that we've all shared and all the meetings that I'm sure you all have had with your companies, I guess we're all past, oh, we must protect working capital. We need to bring our costs down. We really haven't laid off too many employees. We need to, work our economics, and the world is going to improve in 6 to 7 months to 9 months. I think we should just stay away from that whole subject matter altogether. And I think we all need to look at it completely as a blue sky to say, so what are we going to do about it? And are we going to do something about it in our own individual corporate sets, as individual team heads, as individual companies? Or are we all going to bandy together as industry and bring in the airline and the travel trade to say, what can we do to come out of this and sustainably so? Whether it takes us a year, 2 years, but at least it will show a path of togetherness and partnership. And what can we do to make sure that should another emergency or an untoward incident grab the world, have we put in some kind of, I may call them insurances together, so that the impact is less weighty, particularly on our team members, on our employees, because I think they're the hardest hit. So while I did send out a set of questions to all of you, the selection was not based, and I'll just go in a random selection around them, and we'll wait for Vilas to log in. Bhuvnesh, I didn't send you my question, so I'm going to send you a query. Would you and your press colleagues all get together and help the industry communicate to the citizens at large that at least the branded airline players, the branded travel players, and the branded hospitality players have truly gone way beyond their capabilities to put out safety practices, service practices, and encourage people to feel safer. The communication, if it is non-subjective, would be extremely helpful. Coming from press as a non-subjective set of bodies, and all of you can get together. Ajay's been doing flights. I did a flight the other day, and I think a lot has happened. And the only thing that disturbs it is the citizen and not so much the institution, who's done a hell of a lot to put things together. So maybe it's about time that the press helped us and sort of asked us, questions that we have to answer under pressure, and help us put this whole messaging together, which should make people face the fear, forget the fear, and keep the fear behind it. So I'm hoping that you guys can all get together and help all of us in going together. Which brings us back to the business that we are into. When we all began business, we said, there are 3 Ps and 5 Ps and 7 Ps to doing business. And I've kind of picked up my questions or suggestions on discussion based on some that we can together do something about. Some we really can't. The planet, not much we can do. We've destroyed it. The properties that we are in our locations, they will be where they are. I don't think we can switch them around and do something tangibly different about it. So we'll keep those pieces around. But let's hit the people first. And while I was thinking of the session today, Ajay had called up from the highway. I presume you're on firm feet right now, wherever you are. And asked me saying,
yes, I have.
Did you think something about the people that I reminded you on? And so it got me thinking this morning to say, so what did we do about people? And this is a wild thought. We can laugh about people on the sidelines. We all have insurances in our businesses. Hi, Vilas, welcome. Insurances on what we call loss of profit. Can the industry together talk to insurance agencies and say, can we insure our employees that should there be, the government's now calling it an act of God, unfortunately so, which keeps the insurance companies protected. But what could we do as a body to start an insurance coverage as a premium that the employee can pay, which at least for 6 to 8 months or maybe a year, protects the person for at least 40% of their earnings. And if that was possible, I'm sure the ESIC hasn't worked for us. The Provident Fund is small, if that is, and it's not really accessible. But maybe that's another way to help them protect themselves by putting across something with an NBFC or an insurance company, would at least give them the survival for the first 6 to 9 months. I just keep that as a question. So coming back to the people question, I send it across to all of you. What is it that you did? And what do you think we need to do as suggestions to protect jobs, protect motivation, and this regression in the mind that has happened to our team members? And how can we bring it back together for them in the next 2 to 3 months? Anybody go first? I had marked it to Ajay, and I think to Nikhil to pick on this, and Rahul for your international experiences. But whoever can go first, please do.
Happy to go first, Ratan. So far, this insurance idea is a good idea. Not that it's not available now. And the big question is, would an organization pay for it rather than the individual? But putting that aside, what have we done so far? So far, what we've done is whatever was required to be done in the interest of survival of the organization. Very simple. We haven't thought beyond that, or we thought little beyond that. So you've cut down. You let people go. At the end of the day, there was no option beyond a certain point of time. You reduce numbers. You reduce working hours. You reduced the number of days a person spends in the hotel. You've even said, yes, I need my HODs, or some of them very definitely, but do I need my chief engineer 30 days out of 30, or can I do with him 7 days out of 30 and pay him accordingly, even with a reduced salary? So we've done all those sorts of things at the moment, We also said, okay, if I only need 20 people for the job, let me hold on to 60 and rotate them around so all of them have some money coming at the end of the day. But these are at best short or mid-term measures, and these are what most or all of us have done so far. The future has to be something different, and I don't think we need to wait for the next calamity to hit us. Hopefully, there is no next calamity, but you never know. We will have to re-engineer ourselves and our people to be able to scrounge and fend for themselves. A scenario where you are out of a job. We have hundreds of people who had jobs till a month or 2 or 3 ago who don't have jobs anymore. We'll have more being added to the list. It's plain and straightforward. Nothing's changing for 6 months, maybe longer, and maybe a lot longer. So what do these people do? If you take a leaf out of Yuval Harari, we need to re-engineer ourselves every 10 years or so. So if I'm in housekeeping, I need to have the ability to say, if I'm in the engineering space or the mechanical space, can I pick up work from 20, 30, 40 villas? Be able to fend for myself, and my organization can only do so much for me. The organization is struggling themselves; they're bleeding, and some of them might even lead to death. So I think we need to encourage individuals, perhaps down the line, do more than one job. It's not uncommon, and say, okay, I can hire you maybe for 4 or 6 hours, and if you want to do something beyond that, go right ahead. We need to encourage people to cross train and cross equip themselves in terms of skills that give them survival money. Those are my thoughts, and I think a lot will depend upon how well we really encourage individuals to take those lines. There are so many people. I always said I never really sleep over work, but I do lose sleep over the fact that I'm laying off lots and lots of people who till a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago were caring for their families and now are in no position to do so. So I think we've got to equip them to be better positioned to handle these situations if they were to come again. Ratan, thank you.
Okay.
If I may,
Nikhil, yeah, Rahul, please. You cover international too, so give us a broader breadth of what you've achieved and what you can advise us on.
yes, of course. But before, I'd like to thank all of you, Bhuvanesh ji, and our entire hospitality fraternity for standing by my father and us. We all are resilient. We are a very resilient sector and fraternity, and I know that we all will emerge stronger. So having said that, as you all know that we are spread across 12 different countries. So dealing with people, which is our biggest asset, is obviously very, very sensitive, because when you're dealing in so many different locations with different cultures and traditions and values, it always becomes a challenge. But I'd like to answer that question in 3 different, I would say, buckets. Also to pick up from Mr. Bakaya's views, we have followed a similar pattern whereby we haven't let anyone go. We are working towards a system whereby we are keeping the bare minimum staff at the property so as to obviously keep the upkeep of the property going. And because in a situation like Nepal, for example, we were in lockdown, we got off lockdown for 2 months. So we got the opportunity to open the hotel. We started with a bare minimum staff. We were putting them on a rotation basis so that at least they have some monies for their livelihood, at least in the interim. So we are trying to do that across all our hotels across the world. Second is from the perspective of, I would say, insurance cover or cover for employees as well as businesses. I think we were taken by surprise, because many of the insurances that we had got our properties to be covered didn't necessarily cover something like Corona, because no one ever foresaw that such a situation would arise. So now we are having to relook at all our insurance covers. Plus, we also have covers for our employees, but employee covers also did not, I would say, extend to the extent of covering them for through a situation like Corona. So obviously, it was a situation where we were left alone, and unfortunately, not that the government bodies came up and supported us. So we had to find solutions with our employees. We had to find solutions working closely with the insurance companies to protect our employees moving forward. And I think that all these factors moving forward will come into play. And the last bucket, I would say, is talent across the operations. What we are trying to do is also train our staff from if they were coming there for housekeeping. We are now keeping them engaged in other departments as well, because obviously when you have a lean staff and a bone skeleton staff, you have to make sure that they work in different departments as well. And the good thing is that all our staff are actually very open to this, because they want to learn more. It's a time, everyone has a lot of time in their hands. It also helps them in their career to learn more about different departments. So it keeps them motivated. It keeps them encouraged. I think it keeps them thinking that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, which is what all of us have to do from our respective units and businesses, so that they are not let down in any way.
Just add to that, Ratan. Internationally, what we have seen, and we really operate across the spectrum of the globe. So in the US, we have had some layoffs, about 25 to 30% layoffs over there. In Europe, we have had furloughs, because furloughs allowed over there. So with the staff will come back when the business gets better. Australia, unfortunately, doesn't have that. So we've got them we've had to lay off over there. In India specifically, we've had to lay off some of the staff, but more like leave without pay, so that they do get back onto the job as and when the opportunity arises. Again, what Rahul said, we are encouraging cross-training and cross-exposure between departments. So there is a team that is staying in the hotel and actually working different departments, including the kitchen. And I think that's working out very well for them. But on a long-term basis, I think what the hotels can do, and nobody really foresaw this thing coming, and to keep something like an emergency response fund, if I may call it that, for lack of a name right now, going forward, where the employee is like a provident fund, but more easily drawable, and to reach out into that kitty for the employees at the hotel. The organization contributes as much to that fund like a provident fund, and the employee does. And when the employee leaves, he gets his part of the share that he can take away to the next organization, and that fund carries on, so that in events like this, the organization can actually dip into that fund and at least pay partially to keep the things going. And we are actually talking to our owners to go on this mode and engage this kind of an emergency response fund for the future, should anything like this happen. And I think that's gone on pretty well, both, and it's motivating for the employees also to know that there's some kind of a security at the end of it, should something like this again happen on that front.
Great, that's good. That's what I've been leading up to, that could something else as a fund be created, which at least protects people for a minimum of 6 to 9 months. Because a lot of them have had to go home. They have sometimes no way to come back, even if you had a job for them. And there are multiple limitations. So it was worth the thought. Thank you. It's worth hearing that people are doing something about it. If we could jump into partnerships, Rahul, Sudeep, this is the time that everybody's talking about, but I renegotiated my lease contract. I've reached out to the government to work get some dealing on my taxation contracts. And I'm sure, being operators, owners in a mix, including Ajay, I'm sure all of you are reaching out to the other partner to say, what can you do better for me? Has anybody found a common element where the owner is willing to support the needs of the operator, and the operator understands a common need of the owner, and all of us can learn from the fact that, hey, for the world of tomorrow, at least for the next 4 or 5 years, the operator-owner relationship can be mutually reworked on, because each person has a need. And what are those terms and conditions that you found to be mutually acceptable to each other and a win-win, which other people can probably use Because we're all, I guess, at both parts getting the same request.
I can speak for Nikhil and myself because we work on a franchise base. We don't really manage properties.
I put you in to speak. Yeah, I put you on to speak a little later, but okay, go ahead as you jumped in.
And really, every organization to their own model of thing. But I think we operate more on the gross revenue, room revenue basis. So really, when this occupancy is down to 0% or 10%, our franchise fee is based on the room revenue. So it really, we have had no pushback on our franchise fees, barring one or two cases. And that also more like a request, but we have had absolutely no problem getting our fee during these times. When there was a lockdown, it was 0%, so our fee was 0%, and we have had to absorb that cost. So that's at our end at Choice, and on a franchise model, that's pretty much how it works in most of the cases. But I'll leave the management gurus to give their yeah on that.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear from Sudeep and Rahul on this because.
Sure. So
one's an operator completely, and Rahul has both.
So Ratan, what we quickly realized was what was required early on. As soon as we hit the crisis, there was a lot of partnership required with the owners in terms of guidance, what to be done, what not to be done. We had to kind of work together to figure out what it was, and the most critical element there was absolute transparent communication between them and us, and what to do in terms of market-specific employment and financial guidances. So that was the first thing. The second thing, which was most critical, was preserving the cash and reducing our costs. Again, and also complying by rules, regulations, and being fair to our employees and colleagues. So again, full transparency there, and creating mechanisms in terms of reducing costs, whether it be all what we've talked about, redundancies and furloughs or leave without pays and so on. And we had to create market-tailored fee relief packages. So, we did do that, essentially catering to owners' specific situations, whether it's a deferment, whether it's a payment plan, and so on and so forth. And those were typically done in collaboration with the owner so that it worked for them, it worked for us. Of course, we did get pushback in some instances, and you had to just work out a potential solution, which was a win-win in both instances. And then the biggest thing we did was two things, which again, I think everyone did, was relax the brand standards, some temporarily and some a little bit more permanently. And again, with the goal to do two things. One is to evaluate which was absolutely necessary, and also to evaluate which could be temporarily suspended so that there could be preservation of cash. We also, deferred most of the CapEx, just like everyone else. And then lastly, our procurement teams globally went to work with talking to about 140 of our supply chain vendors throughout the system, negotiating savings, which would result in savings on hotels, and then passed on those savings across to our owners. That was typically what was done. Again, we are predominantly, in fact, almost exclusively a management-based organization here in India. And in the West, we are predominantly a franchising. So we begged, borrowed, stole from both sides at the end of the day. But, I think one of the questions you'd ask, does that change the sort of the relationship between the owner operator, if you will, from a standpoint of the management contract or the so on? So we've not had to do that so far. We have made temporary measures. Of course, we're going to evaluate such that, God forbid, if something like this happens again, then we are adequately covered on insurances and risks allocations and so on. But we haven't found that there are too many things which we need to kind of change in the process, which will alter the sort of the base form of our management agreement so far. So we've not had to renegotiate, if you want to call it that.
Okay. Rahul?
Yeah, so I think Sudeep has mentioned quite a few of the points already, but I'll answer that first from a ownership point of view, then I'll answer from a management point of view. From an ownership point of view, obviously, how we are living up to our side of the bargain is to try and keep the hotel up and running, because without a hotel up and running, of course, there won't be any fees to be made either, right? So we are obviously doing everything possible in these difficult times to put in the necessary capital to keep the operations running. What we are doing with the operators, though, is on one side, is obviously working out an arrangement with them whereby the fees that are still to be paid should probably be structured in a way that we can pay that out over a period of time that the business starts to pick up. Second is moving forward from the fee structures itself. Obviously, incentive fee is something I don't think that's going to come for a long time. But from a base management fee perspective, we are trying to structure it whereby the fees could accrue, but we could pay it again over a period of time when the business start coming. Of course, we cannot obviously expect for them to operate the hotel for free. So there obviously has to be a give and take in terms of what we have to give them and what we can sustain from an operation. That's from the fees perspective. Second is also from the reserves. When we have line items such as FF&E reserves in the property, which I think Sudeep also mentioned from your brand standards and brand guidelines that you have to incur capex to keep it up to the brand standards. I think we are also looking at that reserve to not be there this year, or at least till such time that the hotels are in trouble. So line items like these, we are trying to identify so that we can at least have monies going straight towards the expenses that are required on the bottom line. I think the third would be whereby the brands second some of their senior management staff to the properties. I mean, when you have at the end of the day, we know that the majority of the cream of your payroll costs are all attributed majority with the senior level management, the head of departments. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to work out an arrangement with our operating partners, whereby we are trying to do cluster GMs, cluster finance controllers, or trying to minimize the number of expat staff that we have and keep it very lean and mean at the moment, so that we can ramp that up over a period of time. And lastly, I would say it's a very to me, COVID and Corona to CG, it's an opportunity, and we've always looked at that, because we look at this situation to reboot our operations, relook at all our cost basis, and now we are looking at even the payroll cost variable factor, because until unless you do that, you cannot have a big elephant sitting in the room with no monies coming in whatsoever and carry that load for the long run. So you have to work out a suitable solution. Both parties have to compromise. There is no doubt. And I think all our partners, we are thankful and we are grateful that all our operating partners have been forthcoming to work on this with us, because if the hotel runs, we both win in the process. Now, from an operator's point of view, I mean, the tables are turned the other way. Now, obviously, the owners have come to us because you see, majority of our 134 hotels are in India. We have about 75 hotels under the Fern and Zinc and Beacon brands, and we are in the mid-market space. And we all know that the mid-market space is very sensitive to even the smallest amount of commercial expense that goes around with it. We have had owners who've come to us in terms of waiving the past fees and obviously restructuring the fees moving forward as well. But what we are engaging, or what I've encouraged our operating partners who are running the business, my partners Suhail and Param, are that we should discuss with the partners, with the owners, that we would not like to waive the fees, but we will look at a suitable structure that works for them according to their cash flows, works for us according to our cash flows, and also that would entail a longer term negotiation for a tenure as well. Because we would also like to recover our fees which we would have gotten in that period which is lost. So I think the knife cuts both ways. I won't say that one party gains than the other. I mean, it's a relative term, who gains, but all of us have to work together. We are in this together. We have to work together to emerge as winners,
So Samir, Ajay, anything different from this, or more or less the same? Samir doesn't have a problem of cash flows. He's got the behemoth behind him. So he's sitting pretty and smiling.
More or less.
We all run our own P&Ls, right? So I think we all have similar challenges, and absolutely you're right. Everybody else has been shaken, so are we. The P&Ls are shaken, operating costs are high. Going through our 25 years of operation this year, so Silver Jubilee year, and the toughest year I would say the company has faced in its Silver Jubilee year. Of course, Ratan, exactly as you mentioned, backed by a strong parent conglomerate. While we are an asset-light company and are understandably, like everybody else, our fees, which is hotel performance-based, is largely impacted. We have made sure that the support structures to our hotels are unchanged. Our teams continue to be motivated, driving activities for survival, because eventually we will have to get things back on track, and hopefully that happens faster than later. Of course, the advantage we have is that that's backed by our parent conglomerate, and which is putting all its resources and functions as well to support us, and that means it's 2x. I mean, classic examples would be, if I look at operations, how we went around setting up the whole operations approach to the hotel, responding it early March itself. We had a team of doctors and very senior hygiene resources helping us put together a plan in place, or whether it's the approach to sales and marketing during the tough times. And of course, with people, we have done quite a bit to understand how we can support the hotels. Understandably, hotels have gone through challenging times during this stage. And exactly like everybody else, we've also had to experience our hotels having to let go of people, leave without pays, etc. But I would say huge credit to our HR teams, backed by our ITC teams, of course, on how we were able to guide the hotels through this and help them soften the blow, if I may say.
Ajay?
Yeah, I have one thing to add amongst all the others that have been spoken about. And it's very simple. India has a culture of poor payment history. So as an operator, you face that all the time. I spend a fair amount of my time on the phone with saying, can I please have my money? And we have had the odd requests, not a lot of them, on can you realign fees because we're going through a pandemic. And one of the answers is, like Vilas said, look, it's percentages. No business, no money to the operator anyways. But I'm more than happy to say that to an owner, look, pay me my outstanding there, then we'll discuss going forward what we want to change.
Right.
Like any other institution would say to you. And then nobody's willing to talk to you anymore. So it's got to go both ways. I agree with every speaker who's spoken before me. There's got to work for both sides. And honestly, I don't see the need for redrawing old agreements or redoing. As long as your fees are based on percentages, they take care of themselves anyways.
Absolutely.
We are not seeing any incentive fees for 2020 in the large majority of our hotels. So what's at stake is very little anyways. But yeah, I would be more than happy to link as an operator my any discussions on future reductions or possible reductions with, can you please clear my outstandings? And sure, happy to talk about it.
Great. I'll just jump tack into something different. And some of you would have heard Amitabh Kant yesterday, where everybody individually in their own responses believes hospitality is worse affected, should have some support. We will, put in our efforts around infrastructure, but you guys got to get together better and reach out to the customer. So if we were to say distribution, promotion, packaging, all as one gamut, what goes through a drastic reduction whenever times are under is that you drop your expenses on promotions and marketing. As well, obviously, you drop your expenses on training. Just a worldwide phenomenon. Having reached that point, now, because there is no other way to reach out to the customer, there have to be unique ways of reaching out to the customer in terms of conviction, pricing, belief, continuity, ambassadorial context, keeping the typical stuff of loyalty cards. And this is what I'm going to do with loyalty cards, because not every hotelier has a loyalty card that's robust. So there are a couple of IT savvy people in this panel. Nikhil, going first with you. What have you read off? What can be different? And don't give me a Wyndham point of view only, because you're savvy enough in that business otherwise. So outside of the loyalty card, what could be the best messaging, best distribution points, best leveraging of different tools? What could we all learn from, which could be productive?
So, Mr. Keswani, thank you, but I do have to live to Bhuvnesh's comment on me being the badmash. So let me just first address the people piece that you had asked. So we at Wyndham actually put an outplacement agency for everyone who didn't have a job, and it's done wonders in many markets for us, and we've been able to place people in different avenues, retail, hospitals, and so on and so forth. I truly believe hotels are going to be very different, and you and I worked on this more than a decade ago, where we We tried to do multi-skilling. We destroyed silos of a housekeeper doing front office and a front office guy being a server. And I think that is going to be reality going forward, not only in the next 2-3 years, for the decades to come. So at the unit, multi-skilling. You asked a very important question on motivation. And I can tell you that in our case, our portfolios are now in this sub-region, 30% occupancy, 40% occupancies, barring, of course, the Delhi, Bangalore's where occupancies still need to pick up to these levels. And I was speaking to the team just yesterday because we opened a hotel in Mussoorie. And I think it's extremely important to have gratitude that you are in a job at this point of time, and respect the colleagues that don't have a job at this moment. So, the whole feeling of gratitude, and this is something that I feel personally for every one of us who is in the industry, and we should put our best foot forward for anyone who does need our help in any way, which way. So on technology and coming to your question on different ways of marketing, well, I think like you said initially, that the brands have gone out of the way in actually saying how safe and secure they are. You're taking flights to Goa. Mr. Bakai is flying all over the country. I know Samir is flying off today. So we've started doing that. We hit 50% occupancy on the first day in this hotel in Mussoorie, and this is a state that actually needs COVID testing to be done. And I can tell you, people are raring to go. It's just the interstate nuances, if I can say. And the good news today is that Goa has said that no more COVID testing.
Correct.
So you got a COVID test done, you go to Goa. So yeah, I mean, I think the question really is not about how brands are going to be reaching out there. The brands are already out there, and the customers really want to travel. From a technology perspective, I think not all of us are going to put in a lot of money in marketing at the moment, online or offline. We're just going to try and push it through word of mouth, and that's where we are. Those are the realities. So no words of wisdom there. From a Wyndham perspective, Wyndham, of course, is doing a lot more, but that my personal feeling is that all of us are in the same boat, and we're all trying to just row down this river at the moment.
So I want to jump tack into somebody who, straddles multi-industry. Rahul, what could hospitality learn from your other industries and other verticals that you're handling? Find partnership, find distribution points, find new ways of messaging back to the customer that you may be working on with the other verticals, and maybe learnings for all of us in the hospitality vertical.
It's interesting. I'll tell you.
YY noodles and let's get together. I mean, sorry, I'm being flippant on this one, sir.
No, but actually YY is doing pretty well, because FMCG is one of the businesses that's doing well because people want to stock up, which is a good thing. Anyway, just to, yes, we are in multiple different sectors and verticals ourselves, from banking, FMCG, education, hospitality, real estate, and so on and so forth. But telecom as well. Thank you for that. So what we are trying to do, an initiative which was just actually formalized by my father, we are trying to exactly what you said from the get-go, that how can we integrate from each of our business verticals within the group itself to join businesses, to market the businesses in order to grow together. I mean, for so many years till today, we were working on a very, I would say, sort of an approach whereby each vertical would not necessarily know what they were doing or how they could benefit from the other. So now, for example, I'll give you a few examples. Now, let's say that if some of our properties were getting insured by a different insurance companies, now we are looking at our own insurance company to look at coming forward with us. Similarly, with regards to when you are talking about, just in general, from even our financing companies. I mean, people nowadays, the purchasing power in today's day and age for white goods has significantly gone through the roof, because the guys who would be giving clothes for laundry outside are now having to do the laundry themselves, And this is the reality of our life. So we are reaching out to all our business verticals in their own respect to see how we can leverage. But having said that, to do that from a global perspective, Ratan, is not something that is really feasible. I'm talking more from a domestic perspective, but let's keep in mind that our focus now for the next 12 months to 18 months is going to be the domestic market, because we feel that inbound market is not going to come for the near-term future. I think the future of any brand and operations is going to lie on how you can give the confidence to the customers that you are safe and you are in a place that you can experience everything that you wouldn't have in the normal course of time. I mean, this even goes naturally even to take an example of our luxury wildlife in Nepal. I mean, 90% of our business was international. But then how do we survive with that if there's going to be no inbound traffic? So what are we doing? We are trying to re-customize and repackage for the local customers, for them to experience this from a package perspective, and also and one important thing we have done even in our own hospitality businesses, we work with different brands even in Nepal with our 5 properties. We've managed to get a consensus with all the brands how we can leverage on each other's database, each other's operations, by even having cluster sales and marketing in Nepal itself, whereby our sales and marketing head is even selling our Vivanta, is even selling our Safari Lodge, is even selling our Fern. So this is the time that we have to draw in from all our existing businesses, from all our existing partnerships and hotels, but all from the perspective that if you are able to demonstrate that you are offering a value proposition, believe me, people are willing to pay the monies to go there and experience. They just need to, as Nikhil mentioned, of course, they need to be able to get to those locations, which is still a challenge, but something we are working on.
Great. So again, coming back, Sudeep.
Ratan, if I may add a couple of points,
sure, please
since you're talking about cross-industry. So I think there are a couple of things we could pick up from other industries. And if I just take a parallel to the FMCG business, right? So of course, we are in a country which is hugely consumer-driven and consumption-driven. So I think it's a good idea to look at the FMCG business. For years, FMCG companies in their drive to growing have focused on building their own distribution channels. It's only in the last few years, and especially now, spurred even more by the change of consumer patterns over the last 5-6 months. Everybody is trying to buy online anything and everything you want because you're sitting at home. So you can see FMCG companies have fast tried to move away from only depending on the traditional distribution channels to also going online. We have actually had the benefit of having this for years, because we have had our own traditional channels, which is your own Salesforce, your own website, etc., and other online travel agencies, which is the alternate channels which we have had. For years, we've been trying to fight it. I think this is the opportunity for us to relook at our relationships and say, how do we leverage every channel available, because digital is the way forward. So rather than saying, I will not work with this one channel, or how do I get more from my own channels, it's about saying, how do I optimize every single channel? Because at the end of the day, it's about filling up hotel rooms at the right rate. So I think that's one parallel I would draw from another industry. And the second one, if I quickly take on, is probably the hospital industry. Because if you look at what the hospital industry has done in the recent few months, it's been hugely challenging for them. While if you look at it in reality, it's been harder for them because their traditional business lines have been largely affected. People are not going for elective surgery. So that's the biggest revenue generator. What the industry has done is focus on the safety of employees. They've really strengthened their incident management approaches. They've worked a lot on the cleaning protocols, and most of them are communicating it well. So I think that's something we need to pick on, because there is definitely that level of confidence which is much lower in the consumer. We were all talking about it. How do we increase confidence in the traveler to go onto a plane, get onto his car, and get into the hotels? I think this is a time we need to build confidence and trust multipliers across our industry. So probably something we could pick up from this industry as well, I would say, as an example.